Okay, good evening and welcome to the Torah studies. It is Parshas Noach, the portion of Noach, and let this class be in merit of our brothers and sisters in the Holy Land. As we all know, they need our blessings, our prayers, our mitzvahs, everything we do positive will help them to protect them and all Yidden around the world. So the topic today, we're talking about the box stops here, the preserving principles in a world of shifting values. It's not easy to live up with our principles, our Jewish values, especially when influenced with the world around us. And what is the weapon? What is the secret? What keeps us so strong with our Yiddishkeit throughout the generations? We've been doing this for thousands of years. Yes, we had the ups and downs, and people went in exile, and was difficulties. But yet we see that we keep to it, and we keep strong. And what is the secret of this? So we begin with discussing the story of Noach. Noach, of course, was the tzaddik, the righteous person that Hashem, God, told him to build the ark to save himself and his family from the flood, the great flood that is coming. And this was because God saw the world that was not doing well. The world was filled with robbery, with immorality, and so on. And the Torah tells us an interesting sentence. These are the descendants of Noach. And right away the Torah says, Noach ish tzaddik. Noach is a righteous person. That's inside. Here it is. The Torah says, Eile toldos Noach. Here the Noach ish tzaddik tamim haya b'derasov. Noach was a righteous man. He was perfect in his generation. And we know that the words of Torah is to be very carefully read and understood. Every word is precise. And here we need to understand, what does it mean he was perfect in his generations? And in other words, of course, it was in his generation. Where else did he live? And we know the famous commentator Rashi says that he was a tzaddik. He was a righteous and a perfect person only compared to his generations, meaning that his generation was so corrupted. Compared to them, he was considered a tzaddik. And here is the words of Rashi. He says he was considered righteous relative to his generation. However, had he lived in the generation of Abraham, he would not have been considered of any importance. So we got the answer. That's why the Torah says that he was a righteous in his generation, but because compared to the generation of Abraham, Noach would have been of no importance. But this answers the question, but it really opens up other questions. Number one, why? Why was Noach not considered of any importance compared to Abraham? But even a more interesting question, if you follow the actual history, and the generations, if you study the generations when Noach lived, it ends up that really Noach was in Avram's generation, because Noach lived a very long time. When he passed away, Avram was already 58 years old. So that raises the question: what does it mean that if he was in Avram's generation, he wouldn't be a tzaddik? He was in Avram's generation, and that is the question. Avram, says Ebenezer, was 58 years old when Noach passed away. So to understand this, we got to take a closer look at the generation of Abraham. What happened? Why was Noach, compared to Abraham, considered nothing? And we know that Abraham was born. Let's start from the beginning. In the beginning of the creation, God created Adam and Eve. And Adam and Eve were commanded certain 6 commandments, to be specific. They were among them was to believe in Hashem, believe in God. And Abraham was the one who really implemented this, meaning in the beginning it was there, the people knew about it, but very soon people started to go astray. Here's the first, what Adam was commanded. Says the Maimonides, God gave Adam 6 commandments: the prohibition against idolatry, blasphemy, murder, incest and adultery, theft, and the commandment to establish laws and court of justices. And that's the way it happened. Hashem commanded them, and this went over from generation to generation. Adam gave it over to, transmitted these teachings to Hanoch. Hanoch transmitted to Methuselah, and Methuselah transmitted to Noach. Now, here we're talking from Abraham until Noach. We're talking about a period of 1600 years. In 1600 years, you have only 3 teachers. What about the rest of the generations? All of these children, all of these descendants? What happened? So the Maimonides tells us that, yes, indeed, as the generations went on, very few ended up learning about God. In the beginning, it started with Enosh. Enosh was the grandson of Adam. And he was the first one who started, not directly, it was like a mild paganism, a soft paganism. What happened? He was smart enough to understand the greatness of everything what the world has, the sun, the moon, the stars, and everything. And he realized, and he understood the power that everything has, that God placed those things in the world. And he figured, if they are the ones that serve Hashem and give us life and give us warmth and they make the things grow, so it is only proper to give thanks to them. Thanks to the sun, thanks to the moon, thanks to the stars. Each one has their contribution, what they contribute to this world. And But this evolved. That was in the beginning. The beginning was not so bad, just giving thanks to them, although that was also a mistake because, it's not that they have a choice in the matter. God put them there. So you don't thank them, you thank Hashem. But either way, that evolved also. And as the generations went on, the next generation already said that we have to make certain images of the stars, and then it started with the falsehood. They started lying, saying that there was these stars and the moons. They came to them and they told them we have to worship this, we have to worship that, and it didn't take long. Long in our years, but within a few generations, then they lived very long years. So within a few generations, most of the world forgot, they didn't know about the Creator, and they worshipped all these different idols, the different deities, and this all went until the time of Abraham. So Noach tried his best. This we're talking about after the flood. Well, it started before the flood, but even after the flood. And Noach tried his best. For 120 years, he built his ark to save his family. Tevat Noach, the Ark of Noach. He did it for 120 years because hoping that people will ask him, what are you doing? And then he would tell them, God told him he's going to bring a flood into the world if they don't repent. But no matter what he did, it didn't help. And all the way until Abraham. In the time of Abraham, there were very few people that knew God. Avram's family didn't know. They were worshiping idols. Avram was among them. He also worshipped idols. As the Maimonides says, God, the eternal rock, was not recognized or known by anyone worldwide, with few exceptions, such as in Chanoch, Methuselah, Noach, Shem, and Eber. Shem was the son of Noach and Eber. The world continued this way until the pillar of the world, the patriarch Abraham, was born. So Abraham, when he was born, he lived in Mesopotamia, and there was a few people, very few, that knew about God, and they were teaching about God. They had a yeshiva somewhere, Noach and his children, but the rest of the world, they didn't know anything. And they had all of this nonsense, worshiping the idols. Continues the Maimonides and tells us, our sages tell us, Avram, when he was 3 years old, he already started to think. He realized that there was something more to existence than idol worship. He looked at the sun. He saw these things happening, and he figured there must be something. There must be something, a higher power that makes all of this work. As Maimonides says, after this mighty one was weaned, he began to explore and think. Though he was a child, he began to think day and night, wondering, how can the sphere revolve continually without anyone controlling it? Who causes it to rotate? It cannot turn itself. Now, Abraham, he had no teacher, nor was there anyone to inform him. He was reared in Ur Kasdim among foolish idolaters. His father, mother, and all the people around him were idol worshippers, and he would worship with them. However, his heart was exploring and gaining understanding. And as the Medrash tells us, The Medrash tells us he observed the moon, her light illuminated the night, shining from one end of the world to the other, and her routine glistering stars was enormous in numbers. He told himself, this is God. And he worshipped the moon all night. Then in the morning he observed the rising sun's rays. As its light conquered the skies, the moon rapidly faded, weakening her strength. He told himself the moon's light is but a reflection of the sun. Indeed, the entire world is sustained by the sun's radiance. He then worshipped the sun the entire day. The evening fell, the sun set, its strength steadily weakening until the moon, stars, and planets emerged. He declared, there must be a master, a God, over all of this. Now this is little Abraham, 3 years old Abraham, who is thinking and figuring things out on his own. No Wikipedia, nothing. No teachers, no rabbis, nothing. All on his own is figuring this out. Obviously, he had a greater mind, a deeper mind. And he was thinking and developing in his mind, what is it? What is it about the creation? What is God? Who is God? And it took him 40 years to come to this understanding. He started at the age of 3, and at the age of 40, he fully understood this concept. As the Maimonides says, ultimately, he mastered the path of truth and understood right from wrong. Through his accurate comprehension, he realized that there is one God who controls the sphere and who created everything, that there is no other God in all of existence. And he knew that all of humanity had erred. That's why they call him Avraham HaIvri, Avraham the Hebrew. What's the word the Hebrew coming from? Hebrew, it means me'ever, from the other side. He had the whole world on one side, and he's on the other side. And he didn't say, how can I convince the world? This is one of the issues today. We think, you look about what's happening in the media, how they depicting what's happening between the Israel and Hamas, and the vast majority of the world. Yes, Baruch Hashem, now after this happened, a lot of people, a lot of countries are supporting Israel, but, it's not going to last for long. And once Israel is going to start doing what they have to do and defend themselves from the terrorists, you're going to see it's already starting from the world, all the world, everybody's screaming it. And to convince the whole world of the truth is not easy. But you don't give up. You stand with your truth. That's what we take from Avram. He was Avram Ivri. Avram that was standing from one side, the whole world is on the other side. And he, with his conviction, he went and educated the world. And he started teaching godliness to the world. Understanding that there must be an unmoved mover and an unseen creator was only one piece of the puzzle. It now fell to Avram to figure out what God is. He thought and thought for 37 years until he mastered the whole truth, until he finally understood the godliness, and that is when he started teaching this. Abraham was 40 years old when he became aware of his creator. When he recognized and knew him, he began to formulate replies to the inhabitants of Ur Kasdim and debated with them, telling them that they were not following the proper path. And it wasn't easy. You know the story, we're not telling everything here, how the king there in Ur Kasdim, he threw him into the fire and he was saved. He shattered their idols and began to debate and explain to the people of Mesopotamia that it is only proper to serve the God of the universe. To him alone it is fitting to bow, sacrifice, and offer libations, so that the people of the future generations would recognize him. Conversely, it is fitting to destroy and break all the idols, to prevent others from making the same error as those who thought that there is no other God besides these idols. You know the story that Avram went to his father himself at a idols are us store. You know, he sold all types of idols. Avram was there, and one day his father asked him to keep the store, to watch the store, and he went and he broke all the idols and put the axe in the hand of the biggest idol. And when the father came back, he asked him what happened. Why did you destroy my idols? And he says, me? I didn't do it. This big idol did it. And the father says, who do you think you're fooling? I know this idol doesn't move. And Avram says, okay, I made my point. Why are you worshiping it? There's a story of, there was once a chassid in the old shtetl that his house burned down. And he wasn't there when the house burned down. When he came home, they told him the house burned down. And he looks at the house and he sees this terrible thing. Everything is gone. And he started saying a bracha, Baruch Atah Hashem. And everybody thought he was making a blessing, Dayan Ha'emet. You know, when something terrible happens, you thank Hashem for being the true judge. But that wasn't the bracha he was making. He says, Baruch Atah Hashem, Shelo Asani Goy. But you didn't make me a goy. And they looked at him and said, what are you doing this bracha now? And he says, because if I would be a goy, my house would burn. Along with my house would be my idols also. My God would also be burned there. All my crosses and my things and whatever statues would be also gone with the fire. But Baruch Hashem, I'm a Jew. Yes, the house is burned down, but my God is alive and well. Shelo Asani Goy. So that was what Avram was teaching. And what happened then? Avram was teaching this for many years. He then had to flee. He fled Ur Kasdim, and he had to run away. And he ended up in Haran when he was 52 years old. He ended up in Haran, and that's where he was teaching for 23 years. And he was teaching, writing books, having public debates, educating people. And he amassed many, many followers. And he did it for 23 years in Haran. And by the age of 75, God told him, now I want you to go to the land that I will show you. Lech Lecha. And in the land that Hashem sent him, he continued, and he did it to such an extent that he gathered around him thousands and thousands of followers that he really changed their whole attitude, the whole understanding, the whole mind, and their connection to God became such a powerful thing. As the Maimonides tells us, we'll see inside, he came to the land of Canaan, proclaiming God's existence, as the passage states, and he called there in the name of God, the eternal God. When the people would gather around him and ask about his statements, he would explain to each according to their understanding until they turned to the path of truth. Ultimately, thousands and myriads gathered around him. These are the men of the house of Abraham, in whose heart he implanted this critical concept. Implanted it in their heart. And that is the big difference. That is the difference between what happened with Noach and what happened with Abraham. So we asked the question before. We asked the question when we say that Noach was considered a tzaddik in his generation, but not in the generation of Abraham. And the question was, we know that Noach lived in the time of Abraham. Abraham was 58 years old when Noach passed away. And the answer is, the words of Rashi is very particular. It says, in the generation of Abraham, he was considered nothing. What is the generation of Abraham? That's what we just read. The generation of Abraham is the people that Abraham transformed. Noach was guiding them, was teaching whomever came to him to teach him to understand. Abraham took this a step further, and he implanted in the generation that it should be in their heart, in their conviction, to be connected with this concept that there is one God, there is a true God, and the only God that we need to serve. So Avram implanted monotheism in their hearts, and thus they became the people of Abraham. So sometimes you can teach people, you go to school, you learn, you understand. In Hasidus, we understand where there is the concept of Chachma, Bina, and Das. Chachma is the understanding, the Chachma, the wisdom, getting an idea. The Bina is the perception, the understanding, the developing the idea. What is Das is the conviction, and fully connecting to what you understand, and knowing it and feeling it, connecting it emotionally in your heart, implanting it in your heart. And that is what Abraham did. And they did it very successfully with a great generation. As the Rebbe says, their acceptance of God was not just a product of Abraham's defeating them in debate, defeating them in debate with resounding arguments. It was not even just because they agreed with Avram's intellectual explanation and proofs. In that case, it would mean that their acceptance of God was foreign to them, something Avram injected into them. Instead, says the Rebbe, he planted the recognition and knowledge of God in their hearts. I'm saying planted is just like when you plant something. When you plant something, it grows, and then it grows new fruits. He planted it in them. It became theirs in the heart. It became their recognition, as it was Avram's recognition. Their minds embraced the truth of God. That's why he called it the generation of Abraham. At that point, it was appropriate to call them the generation of Abraham because like Avram, they were permeated with the recognition of God. So Avram put the stamps in his generation. And that is why, compared to that generation, Noach was nothing, was considered as nothing compared to this generation. However, but this wasn't the end of the story. It lasted for a while. Avram continued to teach this to his son, the next generation. But ultimately, even Avraham's work also faded away. The people forgot about it, even the Jewish people. When they ended up, after a few generations, they ended up in Egypt. And being in this foreign country, doing the hard labor, and being surrounded by all of this idolatry that they had there. And the idolatry of the world was very tempting. We got to say that. It's hard for us to understand because idolatry sounds very stupid to us. But we have to understand that by they had something very attractive. Just like today's world, the things society is very attractive to us. So what society offers, the society then was idolatry, and idolatry was as attractive. And when you are surrounded by idolatry, almost the entire Jewish people, except for the tribe of Levi, they also fell into this. So what happened? What happened to these teachings of Abraham? It didn't last. As Maimonides continues and says, Abraham taught it to Isaac, his son. Isaac also taught others and turned their hearts to God. He also taught Jacob and appointed him as a teacher. Jacob taught others and encouraged all who accompanied him. He also instructed all his children. This movement gathered strength among the descendants of Jacob and those who joined them, until a nation formed in the world that knew God. The nation, the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, this is the nation that formed, and they knew God. But after an extended stay in Egypt, the Jews learned from the Egyptians and they reverted to worshiping the stars as they did. Within a short time, the fundamental principle that Abraham had planted was nearly uprooted. The descendants of Jacob almost all returned to the errors of the world and its crookedness. So that also failed, in a sense. Even the teaching of Abraham, that was teaching to understand and to implant it into our hearts, it lasted for a while, but not for long. What do we do? What can we do to secure an enduring Judaism? So the answer is the next text. Says the Maimonides, out of the love for us, the love of Hashem to us, the love of God to us, Ahavat Hashem Yisrael, and to uphold the oath God made to Abraham, our patriarch. Because that was the oath. What was the oath? Hashem made the oath to Abraham that his children will forever be his people. God designated Moses our teacher, the master of all prophets, and sent him to redeem the Jews. After Moses, our teacher, prophesied and God chose Israel as his inheritance, he crowned them with mitzvot, commandments, and taught them how to serve him, teaching them the rules prescribed for idol worshippers and those who stray after it. What happened then? When Hashem chose us, he decided, God wanted to have a lasting effect, that the connection should not be something that is lost with the times and with the influence of the societies. God wanted to have an effect, a connection that is a lasting, enduring connection. And the only way to do it is when the connection with God is not a connection that is based on our perception. It had to be a connection that is based and is founded from the higher, superior Hashem, from God's perspective. He would sense that his commandments are just and faithful because he shared them with us from his perspective. He crowned us with them. He allowed us to wear his crown. As the Rebbe explains, we must know that we cannot rely on ourselves or build our relationship with God on our cognition. Our minds can be our only bulwark against idol worship, nor can they be our only reason to embrace and serve God. To shield them from the sin of idol worship, our ancestors required a key factor. Out of love for us, God designated Moses, our teacher, the master of all the prophets, and sent him to redeem the Jews. He crowned them with mitzvot, with God's commandments, and taught them how to serve him. This means that they served God because God had commanded them to. So no longer is it serving Hashem because we understand that he is the true God and we have to serve him. We serve God because God commanded us. It is initiation that comes from above. Not only was their acknowledgement of God inspired by God, but so was their worship of God. Unlike in Abraham's day, when they worshiped God because they learned that God is the only one worthy of worship, and that it is proper to prostrate before him, to bow down to Hashem, offer sacrifice, and pour libations, this is what you pour, the wine, to him, etc. The secret to Jewish endurance is to know that we worship God because he instructed it. When he prophesied to Moses and taught us how to serve him. Just today, I met an individual who didn't even know he was Jewish. He said his mother's mother was Jewish. He was raised as Christian, father Christian, grandfather Christian. And I told him about tefillin. What is tefillin? To wear the tefillin. So why? He says, I want to understand. Why do we do it? I told him very simple. It is in the Torah. God gives us the commandments. It's not something you do because you understand that I want to connect to Hashem and I find my way to connect to him. It is God's way to connect himself to us, that we should connect to him on his terms. As the Rebbe continues, he says, our knowledge of God does not suffice inasmuch as our convictions are compelled by our intelligence. We can only reach the dimension of God that extends downward to relate to us, the element of God that extends downward to become the primordial cause of all existence. It's a deep concept in the Hasidus and Kabbalah. God creating the world is what level godliness is in the world is a very limited level. However, our minds can't grasp or reach the pinnacle of godliness that transcends any form of association with creation. This can only be embraced with faith, because faith transcends intelligence. Human intelligence is a created finite being and is therefore incapable of utter disassociation from existence. We cannot disassociate ourselves from our understanding, from our surroundings. That's where we are, that's who we are. It is only God's commandments to us to accept His transcendental reality on faith that empowers us to embrace this truth, namely, that God is the only real existence and nothing can exist without Him. Because if my perception of God is determined by logic or emotion, a conflicting reason or emotion can drive the first one away. You understand one thing? Okay, then I'll understand something else. It takes something much deeper, something that is connected with something which is above our reality to connect to Hashem. Nothing can pull me away if my perception of God is rooted in God's perspective. So when we're talking about faith, what is faith? I believe. Is that just a childish belief? I believe. I'll say I believe. The belief, the faith lifts us up to a much, much higher level. It is after the level of understanding and after the level of connecting the way we can do it on our own, the level of Noach, the understanding, the level of Abraham, that we reach our maximum what we can do on our own. This is when faith comes in. This is when we can reach to the level that it's beyond understanding. There's an interesting, there was an article written by Jeffrey Alderman. He writes about a debate he heard if Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, that he debated with some skeptics. I'm going to read it inside. And apparently he misunderstood what Rabbi Sachs said. But based on what we just learned, we can understand what Rabbi Sachs said. He says like this: during his TV duel with assorted skeptics, Sachs was asked by novelist Howard Jacobson whether he, Rabbi Sachs, whether he could be certain of God's existence. Sachs replied, I believe faith is not certainty, but the courage to live with uncertainty. And Mr. Elderman disagrees. And he says, really? Is this what Rabbi Lord Sachs' faith amounts to? Is this the sum total of his orthodoxy? It certainly isn't mine. My orthodoxy, my faith, is rooted in certainty. I cannot speak for Rabbi Sachs, but I can tell you and him that every morning in the course of my prayers, I recite from my prayer book the principles of faith as set down by Moses Maimonides. Each verse of these 13 principles begins with the celebrated formula, Ani Mamin Be'emunah Shalema. I believe with perfect or total faith. Not just faith, not even qualified faith or relative faith, but perfect faith. The faith in which I believe, my faith, for example, that the Creator, blessed be His name, is the Creator and guide of everything that has been created. He alone has made, does make, and will make all things. He is total without qualification. So this would be true. This would be true if this is what faith is about. When you say faith, is faith something that you understand? You believe. What is your belief? The faith is when you don't understand. It goes beyond your certainty. The faith is much deeper. It is something which is an experience that you have. It is something that is deep rooted within you. And that is why. Why is that? It is because God gave it to us. It is something that transcends our own understanding. And that is what Rabbi Sachs told him. So, I mean, somewhat that reminds me this what is happening now. Also, again, to connect with current times. You know, there have been a lot of arguments in Israel. The right wing, the left wing. Let's say sometimes you can try to convince someone with reasoning why this is right, but this is wrong. But then then something happens, and you don't need explanations anymore. When you feel something deep inside you, and that's what happened. And the tragedy that happened, in October and the 7th and the Shabbos and Simchas Torah, with the horrific things what they did. This shook so many people that had held opinions. Their opinions were totally on the left, totally, oh yeah, we have to make peace, and it's they're people, we can deal with them, and all of a sudden you didn't need to explain that this is, it just, you saw the reality. It shook them into the core, and you see that this is all of a sudden. It's not that they change their mind; they feel it now in the essence, in the heart, in the soul, that we need to go in a different way. They say also in the Kabbalah Shabbat, we say, Hitnari meyafar kumi. One of the songs we sing Friday night. Hitnari meyafar kumi. Wake up from the dust. So the Medrash says, it gives an example that we have to wake up from the dust. It to shake up. Hitnari, to shake up. The Medrash says, just like we have a chicken that is roaming in the dust and it becomes very dirty, and the owner wants to take the chicken, maybe paraphrasing a little bit, he wants to sell the chicken, wants to have a clean chicken. So he's going and making and picking the chicken and trying to clean the feathers, and takes many, many hours to clean the feathers and still not clean. But if the chicken all of a sudden gets up and shakes itself up, it become clean instantly. If it comes from within you, this is what we need to, this is what it is, shaking up, and we're being shaken up. We're being shaken up. And being shaken up, unfortunately, it happened through a painful thing, a painful tragedy that shook us up. But we have to use this opportunity to shake up and to realize and to tap into our deepest core of our neshama. And that is what is happening in many different ways. Different people express it in their own ways. To cook meals for the soldiers, to put on tefillin with people, to whatever you do, whatever it is, something comes from within you. And that is something what we see it happening. And let us hope that this should be the last painful reminder. It should be from now on only good things, and that soldiers and the people in Israel should be successful in eradicating the enemy. And yet, better yet, it should be done in a peaceful way. The coming of Mashiach, when they will open up their eyes, and the whole world will open up their eyes to see that the only way to do is the way Hashem wants, to live the way God gave us, to live a life of God. And that will bring the true peace to us and the entire world. Thank you all for joining. We shall see you, B'ezrat Hashem, next time.